to discuss the other ones.
Yeah.
All right, great.
Awesome. Well then, let us begin. Rhyme or free, it doesn't matter to me. It's my bad poetry. Good day, and welcome to My Bad Poetry, a podcast where we take a deep dive into our poems from youth, yesteryear, or even yesterday, always asking the question, why in the world did I write this? I'm Aaron.
And I'm Dave.
And we are returning for season 4.
Woo! Ba, 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 ba. I should have had an air horn or something. My bad.
Yeah, well, you just threw me off my groove here, Dave, so...
Nailed it. Nailed it.
And our guest is coming in clutch.
Yeah.
One who has taught us about cento poetry by finding the beauty of reality TV stars' random tweets. In his debut chapbook, May All Our Pain Be Champagne, a collection of Real Housewives Twitter poetry, to which we say, bravo. Alex Carrigan, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me. So glad to be here today.
Oh, this is awesome.
Well, first of all, May All Our Pain Be Champagne. I found the poem in your chapbook that has that reference.
Yes.
And I have to ask, when you found that beautiful quote from our Twitter poets, did you know right away that was going to be the title?
So I kind of told myself, you got to pick the title from the book. Like, I love when people name collections after just like one really notable line. Mm-hmm. So for that poem, just from Potomac housewife Giselle Bryant, that whole poem, I was having so much fun putting that together because a lot of her tweeting was just like, you know, live tweeting the show. So I'm like, oh, I'm putting something really weird. I'm referencing all the other people. But the thing I kind of found throughout making that chapbook is a lot of the times these women try to put all these like platitudes out on social media, but like they feel so much emptier somehow and weird. So I came across that line where she just tweeted out, "May all our pain be champagne." And my mind went, what the does this mean? Like, I just genuinely was so baffled by that line. Right? Like, what? Like, I never heard it before that moment. And I'm like, you know, okay, I got to find out what this means. Like, Google it. And Googling only pulled up, "May all your pain be champagne." I couldn't like find any like specific definition. I think basically what I kind of found it as, or at least my interpretation of it, is basically, may all your problems be first world problems. Yeah. Like, you know, may the worst thing that happens to you be a champagne headache the next morning.
Wow.
And I don't know if that's exactly true. That's kind of just my read of it. But I felt like that perfectly encapsulated sort of the Real Housewives mythos almost, which is like, we're basically building this franchise off what are essentially non-issues.
Right.
Or just very, very specific personal issues that are blown out of control. And of course, we have found out that's not true at all. Like, several of the people in that book are facing legal issues. One of them is currently incarcerated. And for what was 6.5 years, I think she might have just gotten a year knocked off somehow after like a month in jail. Another one is currently facing a slew of charges. So it's just this sort of like weird thing where it's like, you know, oh, you know, we're so rich and glamorous, and our only issues are this person didn't thank my husband for giving when he gave her like his homemade pasta sauce. And it was like that was a legit thing. That was a feud.
Right.
And on one of the shows. So I just found it to be this like wholly empty, stupid statement, but I also thought it was like the most brilliant thing. It was the natural title of the book.
Love it. I have heard it as a toast. So may all our, or what is it? Champagne for all of my friends and pain for all of my sham friends.
Oh.
So like sham is in a
like a fake friend? Oh.
I've never heard that, but that sounds way cooler. Like that's that's at least implicitly like some kind of curse you're putting out there in the world.
Yeah.
But that honestly, that does sound like more of something you would hear on one of these shows.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Someone thinking, I've got the deepest phrase anyone has ever heard. Yeah. No, it's just kind of weird.
May all your red bottoms turn gray. May all your Waterford lose its sparkle. Like, I don't know. I feel like you could... May all your Fabergé eggs spoil. I don't know. Like, I'm just spitballing.
No, you nailed it with that one.
Yep, that's a good one.
That's the next one.
That's your next book.
Yeah.
Oh, well, we have talked about empty platitudes and issues that are blown out of proportion. So, Dave, why don't you share your poem with us?
That actually works really well because I am just the worst kind of person. So this is a poem I have entitled Prescriptivist. Glockenspiel, xylophone, marimba, and chimes. Lexiconal linguistic inexactitude climbs. Which is wrong, which is right, only nerds would start a fight. Let's get ready to rumble. You're welcome.
Oh, Dave.
You're welcome. I'm doing my best to move away from being a prescriptivist and like letting people define the words for themselves. But when it comes to like percussion instruments, I am a pedantic jerk, and it is annoying.
Dave, this isn't even the first time that you've had poems about that subject on the show.
Oh, no, I know. I understand that fact.
Well, Alex, what are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, I do get that line. What was it? Nerds will fight about anything. Like, like that's absolutely true. Like, you can't even announce anything regarding like an upcoming movie or TV show without it somehow making people flip out.
Right.
And I don't know. I definitely understand. Like, I get where you're coming from because, like, I think I saw a marimba in a movie once. And I was just like, what's a marimba? I don't, it looks like just a xylophone. But then it's just like, oh, God, there is some difference. And I'm probably too, like, basic to know what it is.
Well, now we have to fight because you didn't know.
So remind me, glockenspiel is metal and marimba is wood. Is that the only difference?
Marimba is a hollowed wood, so like underneath it's hollowed, because a xylophone is straight bars of wood. There are very specific definitions, and no one cares about it, except apparently for me.
Yeah. You know what, though? I have seen someone on a like reality show, like it was Britain's Got Talent, where they were indignant that Simon Cowell called their timbrel a tambourine. They're like,
yes.
These are not tambourines, these are timbrels. And they're like, what? I think that I forget exactly what difference. I think it was like the number of like little simple jingly things in it.
Really?
But it was just such this like indignant, like, these are timbrels. I don't even know if that's the word. Like, I think that was it, but there's a difference.
Well, Alex, while you have found art in the beauty and bizarre in other people's words, we have invited you on to share with us today your bad poetry, maybe in hopes of finding that beauty within. So be it a cento or otherwise, what do you have in store for us today?
All right. Well, how about one of the first poems I wrote after graduating college?
I love it.
All right. So a little background. I was not really committed to anything literary until I started college. Like, I joined a literary journal at my school. I stayed with it all 4 years. I loved reviewing. I loved critiquing, putting things together. And of course, at the end, I was like, okay, I need to start writing my own. I need to start trying. I took one poetry course in college. Let's do it. And so this poem was one of my sort of first attempts of like, I'm an adult now. This is me as a poet. It's called Flipped Coin. It's from 2014. So here we go. She was the best thing to ever happen to me. Her soft hair, her blue eyes, her pale skin. She was the image of an angel. We had such great times together. We did such wonderful things together. I don't know where it went wrong. I remembered her birthday. I always was there to talk to her. I was the epitome of perfect boyfriends. I still don't get what happened. She just left without saying anything. 3 years of dating ended like that. Not even a farewell kiss. I hope I see her again someday. I never want to see him again. I can't even kiss him goodbye. I gave him 3 years of my life. I needed to get away from him. Why did I even date him in the first place? He seemed like such a good man, but he was always trying to get involved, always doing things without asking me. I never had a moment of peace. All those times he dragged me along, doing the things he wanted to do. He was a prison warden with oily hair, dead eyes, and freckled skin. He was the worst thing to ever happen to me. That's it.
Oh.
Oh, wow.
Ugh.
Okay. This is incredible. The first half just reminds me so much of my high school poetry. It's cringe.
Yes.
But then your flip, I kind of like it. I like
think
it.
that's a cool idea.
It's a clever twist.
Yeah, I don't remember what inspired me. I thought it would be fun to like write basically Gotye as somebody that I used to know as a poem.
Yeah.
That's kind of what it is, because he spends the first part of that song, whining and bitch, and then Kimbra comes in to be like, you were a pretty boyfriend.
Yes.
So,
right.
Yes.
You were the worst.
yeah, because like I said, this was early 2010s, so this is where my mind was. And I do kind of see like where parts of this have played out into my other writing, because I very much love persona pieces.
Sure.
Like obviously the centos I make are specifically built on the personas of these TV figures.
Mm-hmm.
But even just something where I could like change my voice, read things differently. And I wrote this being like, oh, we're gonna like mirror it. Like the first line gets rewritten in the last line. We're gonna do all this. And I don't know. I feel like the idea could work, but like I don't think I even formatted it correctly. Like I know the folks listening can't see it, but literally there's just a line break between I hope I see her again someday and I never want to see him again. There's really nothing to like specifically indicate that, so it kind of comes out of nowhere. I feel.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I feel like a lot of my sort of failed writing is like failing with like weird ideas and structure.
But I think that's a cool, like it's a cool experiment. It's something to try to look at different sides of things. And I do, that's the one thing that I would change, is trying to find a way that they could both say the same thing so that it's flipped on the same line. So like, I don't know how you would do that, because again, you've heard my poetry and it sucks. But like, I think that's I think it's a fun idea, and it's a good experiment to like do kind of like almost empathy training on how to understand, oh no, I was a terrible boyfriend, or oh no, I did not understand that friendship, or whatever.
Yeah, I feel like I lost the specificity.
But I don't know. I'm gonna give you, because I'm looking at this. This isn't like it's not a parallel. It's chiastic.
Oh, is that the term?
They build out, because you get the hope and to see again, and then I never want to, and then kiss and kiss. 3 years, 3 years. I don't know if you would want to like italicize the other voice. I'm not sure, but I do like how you initially read it and you flipped the tone of your voice. Did you envision the day you were writing this, if you remember back then? Did you envision like this is to be one read at an open mic and people will hear the tone shift?
I mean, I guess I hope. I mean, I definitely had to consciously do that reading it here now.
Sure.
But I don't do live readings a lot, but I love doing them. And I very much think like I want to do something that like leaves an experience or a moment. And I feel like, I hope I see her again someday. I never want to see him again. Like that would be a sort of lurch that would get people interested. And so maybe, yeah, I probably was seeing myself on a stage somewhere when I wrote this, but who knows?
There's a deep intent here, and I love that, because it's like you are trying something.
Oh yeah. I do think I was a very persistent attempted writer back when I was 22. Like I feel like, well, part of it was I never actually got published in the journal I worked on. So like I got published in the other journal that was put out at my school, but never the one I worked on. So I feel like there was very much persistence of like, I'm going to do something amazing. I'm going to do something.
When you submitted to your own journal, did you have to do so anonymously?
They knew I would submit, like, because people on our staff submitted all the time. It's just, you recuse yourself during the critique. So
sure,
that has to be awkward though.
Well, that's the thing. I was always the person who had to send out the rejection emails. So at a certain point, I kind of got numbed to that, because it's like, I swung the hammer down. I gotta wait for it to hit me next. So.
No. I want to see the rejection email that you sent yourself, just being like, I know you're the greatest poet in all of human history, but we can't accept this at the time.
No, my editor just told me in my face, and that was it. So
that's
I don't.
rough.
Yeah. They're just like, sorry, we decided not to, and it's like, all right, where are we going after this? Ipanema? All right, yeah. I do have a book. I don't have it's in the other room, but it is entirely just rejection emails this person has sent out, and for over like a few years, and it's fantastic because there's a lot of very specific rejections, but I can't remember the name right now, and again, it's completely on the other side of my apartment, so I can't get to it.
Understandable, yeah. So your structure of poetry, you like Sento, you like that kind of archiving existing words. Was that something that you experimented with early on, like around the era of flipped coin?
So I did not learn what a Sento was until about like maybe 2 years ago. Okay. And it was very out of nowhere. Like kind of I always kind of have to talk about how May All Our Pain Be Champagne's existence was just this very bizarre snowball effect. But I feel like, first of all, I have always been somebody who likes who absorbs pop culture and parrots it back to the point where my brother once told me I had a condition called echolalia, which I heard. And then 1 year later, when I read Slaughterhouse-Five for school, I immediately ran up to him and said, "This is where you found it from." So I have very good memory somehow of weird stuff like that. So I always feel like I was always taking stuff in and parroting it back or rebranding it, thinking it my own way. So then when I was working on another publication, somebody submitted a Sento, and I'm like, "What is this? I don't know what this is." I looked it up. I'm like, "Oh, that's a cool idea. I like that." Then weeks later or months later, I can't even remember, there was a specific submission call put out by the Daily Drunk, which was called Real Housewives of Flavortown. And I'm like, oh, that's a fun idea. My mom and sister are really into that. I've absorbed enough through like adjacent popular culture. And somehow in that, I got the idea, let's make a Sento based off one housewife's Twitter. And didn't get accepted there, but it was a fun piece, and so I just kept sending it out. Eventually it got accepted by Bullshit Lit. And once that was done, I was like, well, this was a fun, successful experiment. Let's try it again. So I made another one, and then another, because obviously I'm telling my mom and sister this, and they're like, oh, check this person, she's horrible, like do her. And that was literally something my mom said. She's like, dude, Teddy Mellencamp, she's awful on Twitter. So that's why there's perfect. And she was right. She made a great poem. And so eventually that I was like, well, I'm not doing anything winter break. Let's just keep going. And that's how the chapbook was made, was just all these very weird, specific things building out. And so, it was kind of just like, oh, so this was literally like the formation of like the first 30 years of my life and my character, just to essentially take in all this popular culture and sort of reconfigure it to a very specific point of view. Because in a way, these pieces are sort of it's entirely these people's words. It's their personality, it's their point of view, but I'm restructuring it in a way where you're seeing kind of my view of them. Like, I definitely think some of these people come off really bad in the book, but at the same time, that was just what I was getting, because it takes a long time to mine a single person's Twitter account for content.
Sure.
Right.
Like, one, it's very tedious and I get bored partway through, so I end up getting distracted. But like, eventually it reaches a point where I'm like, okay, I have like filled like 8 pages of Microsoft Word. We have to start going through this because I'm going to die if I don't. And and that's when you start picking up on things and seeing what they notice a lot. And a lot of times that's just finding like, oh, this would be really funny if you just hit Shift Enter here and made it into a stanza.
Right.
So I love that. And I think this brings us into one of your second poems. These are more pop culture-y. It's kind of where you're finding your footing here. So Dave, do you want to tackle Lottie, or From Lisa Rinna to Kathy Hilton?
Well, okay. I'm sorry. Before we get there, I have to take issue with something here. This is something that Aaron had to explain to me because, again, I don't know poetry. But a cento poem being lines from other poets. I, again, being the awful linguist that I am, who is pedantic and the worst, you're considering the Housewives poets? Because I love that.
I mean, to be fair, anyone can be a poet. They just have to write poetry. But I think part of the satirical element of the book is basically saying, isn't it absurd to consider thoughtless Twitter postings poetry?
Yeah.
So it's kind of it's more of like, this guy had the audacity to go through and make a poem that is like 1/3 just one woman ranting about her Spectrum internet going in and out. Like, and it's like, isn't there beauty in the phrase, what the with the internet? Like that kind of thing. Yeah. Like, so it's just one of those things where it's like, I personally believe my book is dumb as hell, but I am amazed that people find so much depth in it. And I feel like that was kind of the goal. It's like, can you find depth in what you think is completely like fake and shallow?
Yeah, I mean, that's the point of the show. We look at these garbage poems from who knows when, and we're like, hey, there's something here.
But that's kind of like, well, that's the thing. My follow-up to that book, which is coming out sometime later this year, is Now Let's Get Brunch, a collection of RuPaul's Drag Race Twitter poetry. That one, because I was like, oh, let's try this concept again. What's another like reality franchise I could work with? And RuPaul's Drag Race was one that I personally love. It's one of my favorite shows. But there have been like almost 200 people on just the US version alone, and they are way more active on Twitter. And that one I found so interesting because these people were way smarter, way more direct. They were way more willing to talk about serious matters. So it was kind of the elevation of the concepts like, okay, now we are finding more in-depth, more serious, but also a lot more irreverent at times and fun stuff.
Yeah.
But there's still one poem in the book which is literally framed around taking edibles.
Oh gosh.
Like the first stanza is, took an edible, ladies, I'm having revelations. And then the last stanza is, girl, what the hell? This edible's kicking my ass. So there's all this fun stuff, but you can still like put a weird frame around it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I love that.
Yeah.
And I feel like, I mean, with today's modern political, all of the awful, awful things that are happening to trans people or drag performers, I feel like they would have a lot to say and a lot that is really valuable
they do.
to hear.
I mean, I wrote most of these poems in that book last April. So like a year ago, I was writing the majority of the pieces in this book. And even then they were talking about like the toxic fandom that the show is very well known for. They were talking about cyberbullying and social media harassment. They were, one of the timely events that happened was when Caitlyn Jenner went on some news show, and I can't even remember what she talked about. It was something really awful, like, because she's like very hypocritical and her stuff. So a lot of them were saying like, Caitlyn Jenner is a garbage person. Like that's one line in one of the pieces. So that was very much a direct response to like, a serious current matter, and that is sadly still relevant.
Yeah. Even more so today.
And that's part of it is like, I've seen it before that said like, only a drag queen will tell you the truth. And that's sort of how it is. These figures, they're very much like, I will tell you directly, this is not okay. This is not right. What is wrong with you for saying this? Yeah. But then they will also find a great way to really fire it back at you. And so that made a much more enriching collection. Like this book has 40 poems in it. Like Champagne only has 16. And that one, I even just was like, I have too many. I have to stop. Like, oh wow, I probably could have put like another 40 people in this book.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, I'm looking forward to that one dropping. But let's go back.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Yeah, we're having a great time.
No, this is great. So we've talked about where you have gone, Now let's go to where it all started. Your pop culture bad poetry. Dave, which one are we looking at here?
Well, as a slowly melting disaster myself, I think we have to go with Lottie.
Okay. All right, so I'll give a background on this one. So I used to do a lot of fiction writing, and I would attempt NaNoWriMo every November. I succeeded only once. And so November 2020, I was like, wait a minute, instead of writing a novel in this month, why don't I write a poem a day? This was before I learned National Poetry Writing Month is a thing, and it happens in April. And that I'm doing right now.
Yeah.
So I'm like, all right, we're going to write a poem a day. This is going to be awesome. And I don't know what was wrong with me. I did not like make a theme or do anything like, because I know people will throw out like in 30 days, here are 30 prompts. I just didn't. So I'm like, we're just going to write about something significant that happens today. So the day I wrote this piece, I was watching the Great British Baking Show on Netflix.
Yes.
And okay, you're now realizing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is Lottie from season 11. So for those who don't know, Lottie was a baker who was like a 30-year-old woman who looked, sounded, and acted like a surly, disaffected goth teenager. Like she looked like she did not want to be there at all, but she was so wonderful. Like she obviously was a good baker. She was very kind. She was a very good person because, you know, everyone's really mellow on that show.
Yeah.
But she was the person who was like always rolling her eyes, or whenever she had interview time, she was always like, like, you know, it's like Paul Hollywood said my steamed buns were too dry, but he specifically told me not to include the pickled relish, and if I had, it wouldn't have been dry. So she was a wonderful person, and she got eliminated. So I'm like, all right, we're gonna write an ode to Lottie, and I didn't. Looking back, I realized this: every stanza is a haiku, and I, for the life of me, cannot remember why.
Nailed it.
That's incredible.
Yes.
So it's a 4-stanza, 4 haiku. Oh,
yeah.
That makes it.
Because I was reading it back, I'm like, why did I write it like this? And I'm like, oh, wait a minute. But all right, so yeah, but now let me share with the folks. So this is Lottie. How to salvage a slowly melting disaster. Pray, but leave with grace. Your jade eyes saw the cassette tape unravel, but you kept on spreading. Vikings cremated on the water. You chose to do so in the tent. Wipe the tears away. Hold your head high, because you can try another.
Oh.
I remember being sad when Lottie was eliminated. Was one of the like hot tent melting disasters?
Yeah, that was
it?
the one where like they kept making them do all this stuff on like the hottest day.
Yeah,
it was like, we want you to fry donuts in like what was probably like 98-degree weather, and they're like, we want you to make ice cream cake, but no, we're not going to rent blast chillers for this episode. And so you see this poor woman just spreading melt chocolate that's ice cream that's completely melting as she's working. It was horrible. So
okay, so you got the third stanza. Vikings cremated on the water.
Yeah.
Please explain to me. Was there a theme with Vikings? I do not remember that.
One of Lottie's notable traits was that she was a fan of like Viking death metal. And there was one bake, I think it was on Biscuit Week, where she tried to make they had to make like a dining set out of like cookies, and she tried to make like a Viking ship like centerpiece. Yeah.
Oh, you found that?
Oh my God, you found it.
I had to look because I'm like, I remember that. I have it in my head. I need to see it.
I was also listening to a podcast. Like I got into a podcast called Watch What Crappens, which is these two guys who recap shows on Bravo. My mom and sister were into it, and they were like, you have to get into this. And they did Great British Baking. They did this season of Great British Baking Show. And that was one of their running gags for Lottie, was just bringing up like Viking death metal.
Okay.
Yeah. So I was just like, oh, you got to work Vikings in somehow, because that's cool. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
You kind of petered out there at the end, because you can try another.
Yeah, I probably meant like try another ice cream cake, but yeah, that's lost.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember because my wife and I are obsessed with Great British Bake Off.
GBB.
And in the UK, they have an extra slice. So it's like the after show. And they have, when the person is removed from an episode, they have them on that episode to talk about it, and they get a chance to do one of their bakes again. And I'm trying to remember what Lottie did for hers. I can't remember, but I loved her.
Yeah, she's a fan favorite for a reason, and definitely a great muse.
Yeah,
I owed her better.
Yeah, not going to disagree there. Did they bring her back for one of the holiday specials?
I think they did. I don't think I
yeah.
saw it though, but I noticed it. But
Yeah.
you know something? I just remembered this. So here in Washington, D.C., I would occasionally go to like poetry writing workshops with Split This Rock.
Okay.
That was a pre-pandemic thing. I think part of why I did this poem also was because there was a week somebody in that workshop wrote a poem on Rahul. And because Rahul was another like very notable figure. He obviously won. He won this season.
Yes.
And he
Spoilers.
had some notable moments. Yeah. Yeah. But then I was like, oh, if they could write about Rahul, why can't I write about Lottie? Like, I think that was the thought. Yeah.
I mean, it's not popular enough. Like, why would you use reality TV? It's not like anybody cares about it. Nobody watches it. It's not one of the most popular forms of media. Doesn't define our current culture.
Coming back season 4, we're out of practice. I don't know how much of bad poetry we've talked about, but this is fun. Anything else from Lottie you remember you want to bring up? Or maybe even Flipped Coin? Or if you're very passionate about this lovely erasure poem, we can jump into that as well. We're coming up on an hour here.
Let's talk about that. Yeah. So this was what I consider a post-champagne poem.
Okay.
So after I did that, I'm like, okay, I am now a Real Housewives fan. I've been indoctrinated. It's happening, but I wanted to like keep interacting with it for writing, and I wanted to keep finding like new things to do. So Lisa Rinna is a soap opera star turned Real Housewife, and was one of the more notable people on one of the shows. She recently got kicked off the show because of her actions the last season. There's too much time to go into that. There's not enough time to go into that.
Yep.
So Lisa Rinna was somebody I really wanted to put in Male RP and B Champagne. I really wanted that book to have like all the big notable names, but just some of them are more Instagram people. Some of them just don't post on Twitter, or if they do, it's mostly just promote their businesses. No. So Lisa Rinna was one I didn't get to include, but I really wanted to do something with her. So the last season of Beverly Hills, Lisa went completely insane on Instagram and kept posting all these like wild ass statements, like basically like weird implicit threats against people, mainly Kathy Hilton.
Okay.
So I wanted so badly to like engage with Lisa Rinna Instagram posting. So this is an erasure poem I made of like one of her Instagram statements. I'll read the original text and I'll read the erasure. And yeah, here we go. So this is from Lisa Rinna to Kathy Hilton. Here's the original text. I see you. I know who you really are. No amount of money can hide that. Your belief system is not my belief system. You have spent a lot of time, money, and effort trying to silence me, make me the bad guy. But guess what, honey? I'm like a cockroach, and you can never get rid of me. I'm always going to talk about it. The truth always comes out. Comes out always. Sorry.
No, it's
and now the erasure.
The truth always comes out always.
The truth always comes out always. Yeah.
Okay.
And now the erasure. I see you have a lot of honey. You get it always. That's it.
So good.
So that was kind of when first of all, it definitely told me like erasure is not the right format for this, because this person just did not give enough content to erase down to. And honestly, the original statement is just such a bizarre thing. Like, she's proudly calling herself a cockroach.
Right?
Yeah.
That is a strong choice.
Yeah.
I know.
I'm so glad you included this in bad poetry, because what you boiled it down to doesn't quite land. You're just
No, from what I did gather, Lisa Rinna was very much a person who would always try these really big things, but they would somehow fall flat. Like, that's very much what the Kathy Hilton thing was agreed to be, was she tried to set this person up to look really bad, but any sort of scrutiny into it, it was clearly a setup. But, well, I don't know. He says, she says, or she says, she says, whatever. So Kathy Hilton has the honey because she's still on the show.
She's got the honey.
She's got it always.
She gets it always.
Oh, wow. Okay. I would love to keep chatting about like the whole kayfabe around reality shows. I am also worried that if we were to continue our conversation, we might give you potentially too much fodder for your next work.
He only does that with like important people or people that other people know. So we're good.
That's true. Yeah. No. If you use any of the words from this podcast, don't.
Needs a lot of context.
I don't know. Can I get a transcript? Like, that might help me.
Honestly, if you ask, we have a couple. It's hard. It's harder to do. It's hard to do.
I've had to transcribe interviews for work, and they take forever to do. So yeah, no, don't worry. I mean, first of all, the problem is just going to be ha 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 all over the place. So I think we'll be good. I think it'll be good to skip it.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense.
Your erasure would be like, do I include one ha or two? But before we let you go, we here at My Bad Poetry, we end each week with the words of a true poet. So, Alex Carrigan, would you be willing to share another one of your poems with us today?
I absolutely would. So, like I've mentioned before, my first full-length collection, Now Let's Get Brunch, a collection of RuPaul's Drag Race Twitter poetry, will be coming out later this year from Corencia Press. We just held a contest to design the cover, and we're getting close to announce it. It's going to be amazing. So definitely follow me on Twitter at KarriganAK to find out more information about that. So as my plug is leading to one of the pieces from that forthcoming book, which was also my first nomination for Best of the Net from Sage Cigarettes.
Oh, congrats. That's awesome.
Thank you. So this poem comes from the account of season 9 drag queen Pheromone and is called Pheromone Doesn't Emphasize, She Highlights. And I will give a content warning. This poem does discuss mental health, anxiety, depression, social media harassment, and toxic fandoms. All right. 2022 has been a dumpster fire so far. Smiley emoji. I hate social media. I think it's the trauma. I've seen funnier videos exploiting my trauma. People really think the only thing that's ever broken my soul was a slip-on television, as if I couldn't write an entire book on the situations I've barely survived. Every time I feel like I'm starting to climb out of this hole I've been in, the universe stomps on my fingers, and I fall back down to the bottom. Kind of ready to leave my tear-soaked lashes all over the place. My point is, it isn't harmless, and it isn't funny. Nothing like realizing all your memories are melting away. I only have like 12 left. Secure those therapists immediately. Until I'm comfortable sharing the magnitude of what I've been through, kindly STFU. I have so much I could say, but I'm gonna keep it cute. That's why whenever I have some time to sit on my phone, I reply to as many positive messages and DMs that I have the mental capacity to. We better hang out in denim booty shorts with our thongs hanging out when I come to Chicago next. Can't wait to change my hand soaps to pumpkin flavor and cry to Adele for the next 3 months. Don't forget to take your Avril Lavigne pills today. My mom still won't listen to me, but maybe she'll see this tweet and consider it. Thank you very much.
Wow.
It's exactly like you were saying, like the drag queens are just so honest about where they're at and what they need. I am very envious because of how often I have hid my own issues with mental illness, and that is wonderful. I love it.
Yeah. I really love this person. Like they were known on the show for being a crier and kind of a whiner, but they've also made it very clear they went through some stuff in their past. Like they really
Right.
went through trauma, and they continue to. Like once you're thrown into the limelight, you start realizing how much scrutiny you face, how many threats you face. Like there was a video of this person being like harassed in Newcastle by a homophobic drunk woman, and obviously you can find some humor in it, but it's also important to say, like, this still affects me. This still messes with me. You may laugh about me for slipping on the show that one time, but I'm still a person.
Right.
And, but, at the same time, they could be like, you know what, let's just wear booty shorts and dance.
Yeah. Well, Alex, this has been a joy. Thank you so much for kicking off season 4 with us.
Woo!
This has been My Bad Poetry.
Now go write some of your own bad poetry.
You sat through us trying to get off all that rust. And I mean, I don't know.
I like how as you're explaining, like, we're kicking off the rust, you were kind of just stilting your way through it.
I saw the metaphor was dying on my lips.
Yeah.
It's just like...
You need to take some Avril Lavigne pills to get into it.
There we go.
There you go.
Rhyme free doesn't matter.